Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I really hope you like books because today we're gonna create an application with JavaScript which is about books. We're gonna create a books application using React hooks, Axios, React Context API, and some external API source. Let's have a look at the demo right now to see what we are going to build in this project. So we're gonna create this nice looking books application with React, React router, Axios, React hooks, and the context API. We can see that we have books coming from an external source right here. And if I click on the book image, we can get the details about the book. We can see the description, authors, and genres. We can come back and we can add to favorites. And if we go to favorites right here, we can see the books in our favorites list, and we can remove them, and we can see that it's getting updated. And this is whole. So we're gonna learn a lot of things today. I hope you like the demo. If this is your first time watching, my name is Usman. I'm a self-taught developer and I make content about web development. And if that's something that you like and you are interested in, I recommend you subscribe to my channel and also hit the notification icon so that you don't miss any of my videos. Let's open VS Code right now and start creating this amazing project from scratch. Alright, so I have created a brand new project with npx create react app. It's running inside a browser on localhost 3000. And right here inside Visual Studio Code, I have opened second terminal and I will install a couple of dependencies that we will need. And those are Axios and React Router. So what I'm going to do is simply npm install Axios and React Router and React Router DOM. That command will install the latest versions of those packages and we will be able to use them. Meanwhile, while they are installing, let's open app.js and right here clear up everything that we won't need. So what we're gonna do is inside the div with the class name of app, we will clear this thing right here up to the end of the header, and we'll save, and then we will delete this logo import. We don't need it. All right. And we will also start creating our component structure right here inside the folder structure. Well, what we're gonna do, we have installed those packages right now, and I'm gonna close this terminal. We don't need it, and I will only leave the one running my project. And inside the source folder right here, I will create a folder called components. So I'm saying components. And what we will have inside this folder, we will have components. And the first component we will create is navbar.jsx, okay? Then we will also create the footer. So footer.jsx, we will create one component called favorites. That will be the page showing the favorites we have added. All right, and we will have a page which will be I'll say book list. So book list.jsx. okay, let's start by creating our boilerplate for the navbar and footer. So inside the navbar, what I'm going to do is use the shortcuts I have installed by typing rfca, and that will create a functional component for me with default export. Inside this const navbar component, we are returning a div which will be with the class name of navbar. Okay, navbar. And inside this div, we will have two divs. So first div will store the heading. So I'm going to say h1 React books app. So books app, and another div, which for the moment will be just with just a div which will output your favorites. And later on, when we are ready with React Router installation, we will assign a link here that will lead to the favorites page. So favorites, just like that. All right. With that, our navbar is created. And let's go to the footer, and the footer will be similar. So I'm going to say RFCA. And this will be div, and here inside this div we will have a paragraph. So, and that will be books app 2020-22 ampersand copy, just as a normal website right here. And we will give this div class name of footer, just like that. Okay, what we need to do else is to import our styling file. So I'm going to import the CSS file, which is from /app. This thing right here is our CSS file, and I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it for the footer as well. Okay, because we will start styling them in a moment. Let's also create our favorites page. Let's type another functional component and import the CSS file. Okay, and also the book list. So the book list RFCA and import the CSS. Okay, save. All right, so footer is also done, navbar is done. Let's now open our app.css right here and delete everything inside it. We don't need anything inside it. And let's do star, box sizing, border box, padding 0 and margin 0. Just a basic reset. Okay, and later on we will start styling that. But before that, let's now work on creating our structure, how to link the browser router to the application so that we can navigate and then start creating our pages one by one. So to do that, what we need to do, we need to open the index.js file. I'm going to open the index.js file, the main entry file of our application. And from the browser, from the React router package, I will import one special thing, which is called browser router. So I'm going to import browser router from React router DOM. Okay. And what we need to do is just to wrap our whole application inside browser router. So we're going to say browser router, and we will wrap the app inside this browser router component. Okay. With that, we can proceed to the rest of the configuration for the browser, for the router. Right here inside the app.js, we need to import other stuff from React router DOM, which are routes and route. So route and routes from React router DOM. Okay, and right here inside we can do routes. So we are defining our routes, and we will have only 2 routes. Actually, we'll have 3 routes. So route, so the first route will be with path / which is our main, the page that's going to show by default. So the main page, and the element which will be displayed right here will be our sorry, my phone is ringing. Let me just pause this video. And our element right here, which will be displayed, will be our book list. So book list component right here. Okay. Now we will also have a component called which will be the path favorite, so favorite, or we can call this book and ID. So that will be the page which will show the details about a book, and that will be another component that we have to create right now, and that component will be book details.jsx. Okay, let's quickly create this component. So RFCA for functional component, and import the CSS. So import dot from app, just like that, and save this. Come back to the app.js, and that will be the book. So import book details, just like that. Meanwhile, let's import the navbar and footer. So import navbar and import footer, and here we will say book details. Okay, and this will be /favorites, and that will be import favorites, just like this. Okay, so I'm gonna say favorites, just like this. And with this, our routes are defined, our route paths are defined, and we can save this. And if we open the browser right now, if we open the browser, and if we navigate to favorites, we'll see our favorites component loading. And if we navigate into book ID2, we'll see book details component loading. Okay, but each component will need to be between the navbar and footer. So let's also put the navbar and footer right here. So in order to accomplish this, we can say navbar above the routes and footer below the routes. So footer, hit save, and now we'll see our navbar and footer stacking on each other, just like that. Okay, and between them is the component rendering. All we need to do now is to start styling that. Let's close this footer.jsx because and navbar.jsx. For the moment, we won't need them anymore. And right now, start styling them. So the navbar will be with width of 100%, height of 10 VH, background will be black, color will be white, display will be flex, align items will be center, and we'll also say justify content, so justify content space evenly, just like this. Same for the footer. So footer, I can copy this. Actually, it's all the same. So let's copy that and just change this to center. All right, and let's save and see what we have. So it's compiling right now, and now we have the footer and our navbar ready. All right, let's start with making this coming to the bottom and giving some min width to the book list component and start creating the logic for displaying the books inside the books list component. All right, so to do that, we can close the components that we don't need for the moment. And right here inside the book list, we can give this a class name of book/list. okay? And we can go to app.css and say dot book slash list, give this a min height of 80 VH because this is the remaining. So we gave 10 VH for the navbar, 10 VH for the footer, and the whole viewport is 100 VH. So the remaining that is left for the book list is 80 VH. And we can also give this a width of 100%. And what else we will have here? We have display flex. Actually, it would be grid. So display grid, template columns, repeat, 3 1FR. So we'll have 3 book items side by side, and each one of them will take exactly 1 fraction of the page. Okay, this is the grid thing. And then we can say justify items to the center because we will want them inside the center, in the center. With that, we can start creating the logic to fetch the books and work on them. So the API we will use is this thing right here, example data service, example data.draftbit.com. This is a very nice website I found. It's amazing to create front-end applications without backend. And here are a lot of resources that you can use. It's about activities, authors, articles, books, crypto, orders, and many, many more. So in the future, you can expect, how many are there? Maybe around 20 videos using those resources from me. So we're gonna use this API right here. We see that we have a limit of 50, okay? 50 books is the limit. So I'm gonna copy this URL right here. And inside my source folder, I will create a file called api.js, okay? And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna say export const API_URL, and I'm gonna paste this URL right here, okay? And with that, I will save it and I will close this file. Inside my book list, I'm going to import this API URL thing. So import API URL from API, okay? What else we will need here? We will need our useState hook and useEffect hook, okay? And what else we will need? For the moment, nothing left. For the moment, that's good. And here inside the book list component, we'll create our state. So I'm going to say const books set books equals useState. That's going to be an empty array, okay? And what else we will need right here? Axios. We will need Axios. So import Axios from Axios, just like that. And here inside this component right now, what we're going to do is we're going to say useEffect, and we will run a side effect when the component mounts for the very first time. I'm just going to say Axios.get, and I'm going to put the API URL right here, and that will return a promise. So I will say .then, and I will have a response, and I will log the response to see what we have. So I'm going to say console log res.data, and I will also set the books. So set books to the res.data, okay? And if we have an error, we'll say .catch, and we will console log the error, just like this, okay? But right now, as this is something external, I will put it as a dependency right here. So API URL, just like this. Unnecessary dependency. Okay, so it's not necessary. Okay, I'll leave it like this. If it was inside the component, it would be something mandatory, but as it's an import, I think it's not. And that's why it's not complaining right here. Okay, now let's save this and open. And let's see what we have. If I open the terminal right now, when the component is mounted, we will make a fetch request to that server, and we will get an array of 50 items, as you can see right here in my terminal. Okay, isn't that amazing? Let's now work on displaying those books inside the book list page. So to do that, what we're gonna do, right here I will delete this, and I will simply say curly braces, books dot map. I will have a book, individual book, so I'm looping through the array, and for each book I'm displaying a div. So I'm displaying a div which will be with the key. So div key will be book ID. Okay, and inside this main div we'll have a div which will display the heading, the title. So div, and here we will have an h2, and here we will say book that title. Okay, then we will have another div, and here we'll have the poster of the book. So we will say div image, source will be book dot image. I think it was image URL. Let's check this. Let's come back to our API right here and see. Yeah, it's image underscore URL. Book title image underscore URL. Okay. And it's complaining because we need an alt tag. So for the alt, let's simply put hash, just like this. And then below this we will have a div, another div which will store our buttons, and right here we can say button, and that button will say add to favorites, just like this. Okay, with that our book list structure is ready, and we can save and we can see what we have. Okay, let's open, and we see the books. Okay, we see all the books. Let's start styling them to make it prettier. Inside the app, what we can do is give this div a class name. So class name of book, I can call this book. Okay, so book, or book div book. Okay, let's call this book. So the book, so each book div we can give it book text align of center. For each image we can say width 300 pixels and height 300 pixels. And we can see them looking better. Okay, and we can also do for each book display flex direction to be column, align item center, and justify content center, not baseline. All right, let's see what we have. Okay. For each button, we can say button padding, padding 10 pixels, background to be black, color to be white, so color white, width to be, I don't know, 100%, border radius of 5 pixels. All right, and let's see what we have now. Let's save. Let's see the buttons. Okay, something is not this one. Something is not correct. Let's see what we did. Book list. Div class name book list. The book list. Grid template columns 3fr, justify item center. I can also say text align center. All right, we will work on this. Add to favorites, add to favorites. Each button. All right, let's continue. We'll come back on the styling later. Let's achieve our functionality first. So we have this thing at the moment, and we can start creating our context in order to display the books inside the favorites right here, and to grab the logic to make the logic for this to happen. We can probably also say for each book. So for each book, we can say margin 20 pixels top and bottom and 0 left and right. Okay, because that will give some space between the books, just like this. All right. And for each image, we can say image, we can say transition. So transition all 0.3 seconds is. And when we have image and we hover over the image, we want to transform scale 1.1. And when I hover over the image now, we'll see that we have this nice effect. Okay, just like that. Actually, I think H2 is too big, so let's return right here and let's give this H4. For book title, let's make it H4. H4 and H4. Let's save now. And it looks better to me with a smaller title. All right, so let's now start working on the context. So to create a context right here, what we'll do, we will also create a folder called context. And inside this context, we will create a file called appcontext.js. Appcontext.js. Right here, we'll say import, create context from React. And what we'll basically do, we will say const app context equals create context. And that will be null initially. So the context will be null initially. And what else we need to do? We need to create a component that will return the context provider. And to create this, we can say const app context provider, and it will accept the children. Okay, that will be a functional component, and this will return app context dot provider, and here we will return our children, basically all the components that are wrapped inside the provider. We will also need import useState from React, and here we will say const favorites, so favorites, set favorites, and that will be an empty array. So useState, an empty array, and we will also create two methods that we will pass here as a value to the context that we can grab inside all the other components using the context. So the first thing that we will create is we will create a method called const add to favorites, and that will be a function. Okay, and we will also have one thing called remove from favorites, and here we will accept an ID of a book. Okay, so as a parameter, so ID, and we will do something, and right here as a value for the context provider we will pass the favorites array, add to favorites, and remove from favorites methods. Okay, with that, all we need to do now in order to use the context is to create one more additional method, which is a very good practice, and I encourage you to do that. We will create a hook that will return our context. So I'm going to say const, I'm going to say export const use app context. Okay, and that's going to be just a normal function, and we will say const context. We're going to also import use context right here. So const context equals use context, and that will be the app context. Then we'll say if the context is undefined, we will throw new error. So throw new error, and we can give this error a meaning of app context must be within app context provider. Okay, else we will return the context. If there is no error, we will just return the context that we will use inside other components. And this is the whole thing that we need to do, plus going inside index.js and importing this context provider. So import, did we did an export default right here? No, we didn't. So we can say export default app context provider. So we are exporting this provider, and we will import it inside our index.js right here. Import app context provider, and we will wrap our application with this app context provider just like this. Just like this. And with that, our context is ready and we can use it inside our application. Now let's go to book list and start working on that. So to use the context, we can import use app context hook we created. Okay. And right here inside the component, we have to do const. So we need to extract those values that we pass to the value right here. So we can just copy them because we will need them, and paste them right here and say use app context, just like this. Super simple. So we are getting those from the context and we want to use them. We are extracting them from the context. And all we need to do now is to fill out our logic to add to favorites and remove from favorites. So what will happen when we add to favorites? Well, basically it will happen the following. Whenever you click the button, you will pass the whole book right here as a parameter. So the whole book object, which you will have, so the whole thing right here, you will pass it to this method. And all the logic you need to do is const, you have to say const, old books, so the old favorites, so old favorites, you can say equal to an array, and you can spread the favorites that you already have clicked. Then you can say const new favorites, so the new favorites equals to old favorites dot concat book, just like this. And then you can say set favorites to the new favorites. So you're setting the new state, and that will re-render, that will make the whole tree render because the context is rendering, and you will see the new values for favorites. So set favorites, new favorites. With that, add is done. What happens when you want to remove? Well, you will click on the same book and you will pass the ID of the book, and you will delete only this book with that ID from this array of favorites. So the logic is pretty much the same. Again, you have to say const old favorites is equal to spreading operator and favorites, so already existing ones. And you can say const new favorites, that will be equal to old favorites, so old favorites dot filter, so you're gonna filter by book, and if the book that if the book ID, so book dot ID is not equal to the ID that is passed, you will filter this out. And then you can say set favorites to the new favorites. All right. With that, your logic is ready and you can start creating whatever you want. Now, in order to make this work, let's give this button an on click. So on click, and when we want to add this to favorites, we can run a function and say add. It's not suggesting me, so I'm gonna copy it. I'm gonna say add to favorites, and here I will pass the whole book that I'm iterating over. Okay. And if I do this and save now and console log the favorites, so console log favorites are favorites. Okay. Favorites are favorites, and come back right here and open the terminal and hit the inspect tool and go to the console. So right now initially we see that favorites are array of 0, so no elements inside here. But if I click this, we can see that right now we have 3 books. Okay. We have 3 books right now. Let's make whenever we add on favorites, we want immediately to change the button to be removed from favorites and remove that book from favorites. Okay. So to achieve this, what we will need to do is we will do the following. Right here, we'll create a method. We'll create a method and we will call this const favorites checker. All right, favorites checker. And whatever we'll basically do is favorites checker will say const boolean will be equal to favorites that sum. We'll run a method called sum, which checks whether at least one element inside the array meets a condition. And we'll say book, and we'll provide an ID. So I'll say ID const boolean book, and if this book.id is equal to the ID, it will return either false or true. And then I'm just going to return the boolean right here, boolean. Okay, and with this method we can go right here, we can open set of curly braces, and we can say favorites checker and pass the book ID. So pass with the book ID, and if this returns true, if it's already inside our favorites array, we have to remove it. So to do this, we will copy this button and we'll paste it right here, but we will say remove from favorites, remove from favorites, and right here we will use the other method, remove from favorites, and we will pass the book.id instead of the whole book. Okay, and it's complaining because we need an else, and we will grab this button and we will put it inside this else thing right here. All right, now if you save this, it has to work. You see, they immediately change to remove from favorites. We can click and we can remove and we can remove. Right now, we don't have anything inside the favorites array. If I open my terminal and if I go to the console again, we can see favorites array is 0. But when I click, I add, and I add, it's 3 elements. But I remove, it's 0 elements. Exactly the behavior that we want. So it's working perfectly. Okay. And this is good because when you add, you cannot add it once again because it immediately changes to remove. Yeah, so with this, our component is ready. But let's see why we cannot expand this button. I'm very curious why it's not expanding. Let's inspect this. So hit this tool, go to this button and element style, width 100%. It's not. What if we give it pixels? Width 300 pixels. Okay, so we can give it 300 pixels of width and it will be that size. Okay, let's come back. Let's go to app.css, and for the button, where's the button? Okay, width 300 pixels, font size 20 pixels. Okay, save, and let's see that we have accomplished this. Okay, it looks better now. Okay, it looks fantastic. Add to favorites, remove from favorites, and functionality is working as well. But now, as we have this working, let's work on the favorites page. So right here, I want to navigate to this favorites page when I click this link. So to achieve this, let's go to the navbar. Navbar, where's the navbar? Okay, navbar, and here, let's import a thing from the React router. So I'm going to say link, import link from React router DOM, React router DOM. And here, we can just say div link and we can say your, actually it can be I don't know, h3 your favorites. And link will be to/favorites, just like this. Bam. Open the browser, it should be changed. Click and we go to the favorites page. Let's also come back, open app CSS, and somewhere right here, let's say anchor tag, color white. Color white and text decoration none. That will remove the underline below the thing right here. So your favorites. All right, guys, let's work on the favorites page right now. Okay, so to do that, pretty much what we'll do is we will open our favorites component and we'll give the favorites component a class name of favorites, and the favorites component will have the same styling pretty much as the book list. So what we can do is we can copy the book list. So book list, let's copy the whole thing. So copy it and we can say favorites, okay. Just like this. Go back and we can see that it has expanded. So the whole middle thing has expanded and we can display the favorites right here. So what we will do is from the book list, we will copy this. Okay, so we'll copy this. We will also copy use app context import, and we're gonna paste it right here, and we will copy the whole thing right here. So this thing right here, but instead of books.map, we'll say favorites.map. So we will loop through the favorites array this time. Okay. However, when we don't have any favorites, we have to display something. So what we're gonna do is favorites.map, but before that, we'll say favorites dot length is greater than 0, we want to map, else we want to display on h1 you don't have any favorite books yet, just like this. With that, I think it will be working. So let's save this, come back, and we can see that we have 2 books, and we can remove them, and we'll see that we have the heading appearing right here. And we can come back to our local host, and we can see that it's updated. Whatever we remove from favorites is updated right here. And we can add, we can go, and we can see it right here. This behavior is amazing. What is left now is whenever we click on the image to navigate into the page and grab the data for that book and display it inside book details. So to achieve this, what we can do is we can remove the favorites, we can remove the app context, and we can open book details.js, JSX, and give this a nice class name of book details. All right, book details. And now let's go to book list and import one special hook from React Router. I will say use navigate. Import use navigate from React Router DOM. All right, and this is from React Router version 6. And right here, all you need to do is to say const navigate equals use navigate hook. Okay, and right here on the image, we can say on click. We can say navigate, and we can open set of curly braces, and we can say navigate slash. So remember, inside the app.js, we gave this slash book slash ID. Okay, so what we can do slash book slash, and we can say book ID right here. Okay, and when I save this now, you will notice that whichever book I click, it will be reflected on the URL right here. Okay, book, and the ID is 2 right here. Okay, if we test this, so we can say book slash 2, we will get the details for the book. How was it? I forgot. Books, we can say books 2, and we can get the book details for ID with 2. Let's reflect that also here. So books and book list books. Okay, now as we are navigating to book details component, and we have this ID of 2, we can get this from the params from the URL and fetch the data required. So to do that, what we're gonna do is we will go right here inside book details, and we will import something else. So we're gonna say import use params from React Router DOM. Use params from React Router DOM, and here we will say const params. No, it will be const ID. So whatever you give this right now this is a slug. So whatever you call this, if you call this the DID or something else, whatever, you have to specify the exact name you have given right here. So you have to say ID equals use params, and that will give you the ID from the URL. Okay, so now as we have this, we can also import use state hook. So use state, and you can import Axios from Axios. Okay, and now you can also import useEffect. So useEffect, when you mount this component, we'll have a state. So we'll say const book and set book, and that will be an empty object, not an array but an empty object this time. We don't need an array. And right here we'll say useEffect. So useEffect, we will run an effect, and we will say on component mount, and here we'll open our API URL again, and we will copy this right here, this URL, and we will come back, and here I'll say export const book details URL. All right, and that's gonna equal this thing without up to the slash, and the ID we will generate, we will provide it dynamically. Const book details URL. I'm gonna save this, and right here I'm gonna import book details URL, just like this, and inside the useEffect I'm gonna say Axios.get. I'm gonna open a template string. I'll provide the book details URL, and after it I'll put a slash, and I'll put the ID that I want to fetch the book, the ID of the book that I want to get the information for, and that will return a promise, of course, and that will give a response. And after we have the response, we can say set book to be res.data. Okay, and if we have an error, we can say catch error console log error, just like this. But it's complaining right now because we have to provide the ID, the thing I was explaining you before that on the other component. Here it's complaining because it's inside the component, so we have to provide it. And here, what we have to do left? So inside this book details, we can say we'll have two divs. So here we have one div, which will be the image of the book, and here we'll have another div. Okay, so inside this div we will have let's say h2 book title. Here we'll have an image, let's say book, an image URL, and I'll provide some out here. All right, and right here what we'll have else will be let's say h2, so h2 description. Okay, and here we'll have a paragraph, so I'll say paragraph book description. Below that we will have h2 outer authors. I think it was authors. Let's see. Authors, yeah, and then we will have also the genres. The genres. Authors. Below this, we can have a paragraph. Authors. And I can say genres. And say genres right here. All right. Now with this, if we save and if we open, it will be ugly because we have to style it. All right. Something is missing right here. Let's see what. Let's go to console. Let's see what we have. No routes match book. Let's return to localhost 3000. And we can get the details. We can go for Harry Potter and we can see for Harry Potter right here all the details. Let's style this thing. So let's go and book details. So the book details will be with the same thing. So let's say book details, height of a min height of 80 VH, width of 100%, display will be flex, align item center. I don't know why it's always baseline. Align item center and justify content, space evenly, and maybe text align center. Let's see what we have created. Bam. No, I don't need the text align center. Sorry for this. We're gonna comment this out. No center align center. Well, we can say some padding of, I don't know, 10 pixels. Let's see, for the whole div. All right. And we can see, and maybe we can go to book details and call this book, so class name. So class name book image, and this div will be with class name book poster. Okay, and for book poster, book slash poster, we can say margin from 0 and 10 pixels left and right, just like this. Sorry, it's not book poster, but it's a book description. Sorry, so book description. So book description, come back right here, book description. Okay, now you can style this as per your choices. You can make it look however you would like. However, it's not, because we haven't imported the, I believe we haven't imported CSS file. Yeah, no, it's imported because we haven't saved. Okay, let's save. It should work. It's not. Import from app book details, book slash details, book description. book description. Anyway, you can work on this. It's just a styling matter. Yeah, so what we have accomplished today, we have fetched resources from this very nice API. We displayed the books. We learned how to add them to our favorites and remove them from favorites. So add, and add. Go to favorites, see our favorites right here, remove them from favorites, update our list accordingly, come back and learn how to pass the ID to the URL, fetch the data for that respective book, display it right here. This is so much that you have learned today, and I hope you like this video, because I put a lot of efforts in order to create it. If you want, you can make this application responsive and add some media queries and stuff, but we will stop right here because my goal was to teach you how to use hooks inside react.js and all the special stuff from React Router DOM. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy the video, make sure you hit the like button, recommend to a friend, subscribe if you haven't, and I see you again in the future.